Heading via Zoom to Perth to catch up for our weekly segment with our very own contributor. Her name is Karalee Katsambanis. Welcome. Terrific to have you. It's been a big week already, and the word is filtering through that WA is open for business. How do I know that? You've had a spate of arrivals at the airport and you're letting them in. What's the reaction been like?
Hello, George. Hello, everyone. Look, the reaction is still a little bit surreal. These are family and friends that have been separated for more than 8 months. And in some cases, with our FIFO population, almost a year. There have been tears and cheers and flowers and welcome cards at the Perth domestic airport. But people are forgetting a very important thing, that it's a lot of bittersweet tears as well, because a lot of people, Western Australia has been dictating, holding the other states to ransom.
You touched on the word ransom. I want to touch on another one that's bothering me. We're hearing reports of price gouging. Are people taking advantage of these very complicated conditions we're going through?
Look, I think they are. The airlines have had to scramble to put on a lot more flights. Some flights are going for $1,500 between Melbourne and Sydney to Perth. There are some people that booked more than a month ago before they realised that the border would be lifted for no need of quarantine, and they paid $300. And we've heard stories that people from Melbourne have been rerouted through to Sydney. The flight has taken forever to get here. Sadly, at this time of year, Easter, Christmas, school holidays, there is always a price increase by the airlines, but $1,500 is a lot of money when a normal return airfare might be between $400 or $500. Put a family of 4 together, that's an awful lot of money. However, people, I think, are just delighted. They are willing to spend a lot of money for their mental health and to really be reunited with friends and family.
Does this also mean that this could be the end of this hard border that Mark McGowan, the Premier of Western Australia, has been talking about, or is that still not the case?
George and viewers, I want to make it incredibly clear. Our Premier Mark McGowan has said in no uncertain terms. There are ads running on radio, and he has said it in press conferences every day this week. If there is an outbreak in any of the eastern states, he will not hesitate to re-implement the hard border. Now, a few days ago, there was one case recorded in New South Wales. One case. The opening of this border for December the 8th was hanging for 3 days as to whether he would allow it to go ahead. People were flooding talkback callers, radio saying one case does not constitute an outbreak. The problem is in Western Australia, as I've said before, it's a very unique place in the world. People are very subservient. They're almost incredibly grateful. They have, given over a lot of their own personal control to our Labor state government. We've seen what's happened in Queensland and in Victoria. They think that the government will be the saviour. They've been very supportive of this hard border, that they're living in a bubble, and it is quite horrifying that they still don't realise that our life will never be the same again. For a Premier to have that amount of control, to hold the rest of Australia to ransom, to say, I'm going to close the border at any time, that is not a way to live. And it also means that any West Australians wanting to go and visit Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, they are always going to be in fear that when they're over there, if Mark McGowan implements the hard border again, there is absolutely no guarantee, even with a good to go pass, there is absolutely no guarantee that they will be allowed back to their home in Western Australia. We've seen people that have been trying for 8 months that have filled out these good to go passes more than a dozen times and they're knocked back. That is just criminal.
I call it the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads. That's not something we need. Something else we don't need, there's been a parliamentary inquiry into the remote Indigenous communities in WA. Some of the grocery prices going through the roof. What's going on there?
Yeah, look, this is quite shocking. As you know, Western Australia is more than a third of Australia, and for the rest of the world to know that as well. And we have a lot of remote, rugged outback terrain we have a lot of remote Indigenous communities. Now, these general stores and the areas up there, naturally, freight costs a lot to get fruit, vegetables, and all the goods up there. But there has been an investigation, a 2-litre container of orange juice, which would cost $5.50 in the Perth metropolitan area, is $12 in some of these communities. And a lot of the Indigenous families are being forced to spend 93% of their income just to be able to get the basics. And this isn't good, because we know that their quality of life, their standards of living, their health expectancies are not as good as they should be. And it is just complete price gouging by a lot of these things. I mean, it'll always be a little bit more expensive in the country areas of Australia than the metro areas, but this is horrific. However, a parliamentary inquiry has now delivered its findings. The Indigenous Affairs Minister, Ken Wyatt, is having a look at it, and hopefully this can be stamped out.
Now, when you say Ken Wyatt, we're talking about the federal Indigenous...
We are indeed.
Right.
Sorry, federal,
okay.
yes.
That's fantastic. Well, that's encouraging, because something needs to be done. If we're going to bring everyone on board, if we're going to lift and make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, this is the sort of thing that we need to attend to. And Ken Wyatt is certainly a first Australian. He has it in his genes as part of his DNA. It's important for him to also make a statement. It would be terrific. What else has been making news in WA?
Well, look, a little bit of a funny story. I'm sure around the world and across Australia, no one likes getting caught for speeding by the police, whether it's by the police or whether it's by a speed camera on the side of a road. We've had a fellow in Perth who was so incensed when he drove by one of these cameras that flash, he actually did a U-turn, came back and actually smashed the camera. Now, sillily, his number plate was the last one on the camera, so they were pretty able to track him down a couple of hours later. This fellow has fronted court. He's been charged with one charge of criminal damage, but the speed camera cost $70,000 here in Western Australia, and he's going to be ordered to repay that. So we'll wait and we'll actually see what happens, but not a good move. We all get frustrated if we're caught speeding or going a little bit over, but a very hefty price for this young man to be paying.
Wow, hefty price, $70,000. Karalee Katsambanis, as always, it's important that we keep in touch. I know that Mark McGowan is very keen to secede. We, though, believe that Western Australia should be part of the Greater Australia. And in our efforts on TheInformer, we're going to continue to do it, and you're going to be our liaison. So best wishes for the week. Look forward to catching up with you next week. Make sure the family's okay, and I can't wait to see what you're going to dredge up next week and showcase for us.
Thanks, George.
All the very best. Karalee Katsambanis, our contributor and our regular on TheInformer from WA.